I want to start this first and foremost with something I've refused to accept about my life for a long time. That it's okay to struggle. It's okay to have doubt. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be insecure. It's okay to understand that you don't know everything. The whole point of what I'm going to be getting into today is to share a little bit about my life and some of the things that have not only saved me, but I believe allowed me to listen. Most of us go on about our day-to-day and we drown our thoughts, our hearts, with saturated media, some sort of narrative coming in at every direction, work perhaps, or even just the noise that's going on in your family. And it's very hard to listen, it's very hard to hear. And so that's really what this is about. I was 21 years old. Around 20 and 21 were some of the darkest moments of my life. And I want today to be about looking deeper into the life that you have around you. I want it to be about opening up what's always been there, and actually what's always been guiding you. Now, most people believe that their life is just a silly circumstance, and that life isn't something that they should investigate for themselves. These are all really harmful beliefs, and they disconnect us further and further from ourselves. Purpose, meaning, those are ancient, unfortunately, in today's day and age. They're so far from our culture, so far from who we are as people. And it is not something about how we live our lives anymore. Meaning and purpose is another way to monetize a career. It's no longer something that's personal. And I believe that everybody should be in search of that kind of life. How personal can you make your life? How intentional can you make it? Because I could tell you one thing. There was nobody more miserable than me. There was nobody who had less friends. There was nobody who felt like he was the biggest imposter. And the worst part was, I was conscious of all of it happening before my eyes. I could see myself wither away as a person. I could hear this voice in my head beating the absolute shit out of me. And putting all of the cosmic ideas aside, there were a few things that I did because I knew I needed to do those things that helped me find the path of purpose. This path of purpose is the deeply existential reason why we're here. This void that we have inside of us that makes us feel so lonely is not because we don't have people that surround us. It's because we're not being who we are. We're not being who we're supposed to be, and we're not on the path of that purpose. If we're not there, everything is meaningless. It's all suffering. And every step that you've taken was a step in the wrong direction, and you know that. So perhaps let's live an intentional life. A life where you can truly live it, where you can breathe in the air, you could feel the sun, and you could feel the cool ocean against your skin when you take a deep dive into who you are. I was 20 years old. I was working as a trainer. I know I said this story at the time, but I can tell you if there was something inauthentic about me, it was that. Really what I want to get into is just how much of a struggle it was for me to even show that it was a struggle. And my God, it would have shortened the road. If I was just willing to accept I was struggling. There's a deep message behind all of this. You are not alone. I was not alone. But my God, that I feel alone. Hindsight, looking back on it 3 years ago, I can really realize that there was something holding my hand. There was something speaking to me. And it wasn't nonsense. It's not clutter. They're going to want to tell you that. But I swear to God, it's something bigger. It's the reason why you're here. And you have to listen to that voice. And if I could be that person in your life that could speak to that still small voice and make it a little bit louder so you can believe, because that's exactly what we're here to do. Believe that that's not just some sort of voice or some sort of clutter. It's exactly what you are here to bring to this world. So I'm 20 years old. I was dating this girl who I pretty much never thought I'd leave. I thought I was going to get married to her, whatever that meant. All of my ambitions and all of my desires were being suppressed further and further down my throat into my stomach. There was a point in the relationship after 2020's incident where I was starting to just reflect a little bit more. Now, I know most people are probably going to tell you that not to do this, but I'm going to tell you to do this. Watch more film. This doesn't mean turn on your TV and watch 90 Day Fiancé. No, this means watch art. There's something that has been separated from our society as a whole, and this made me struggle significantly. I didn't know what art was. You know, we think, oh, let's go to the Getty's Museum and look at nice little pastel colors. No, it's the music you listen to. It's the film that you watch, and it is the thing that is mirrored in your society, and it's a reflection of your society. So there is this still small voice, and I need you to really listen to it because it's going to be what's guiding you in your life, and it's what guided me. So I'm sitting there on the couch, unfulfilled as can be, and I just remember this ache I had, and some weird thoughts and ideas started coming to my head. It was weird, and I'll tell you what it looked like. Watch Matthew McConaughey films. Well, that's kind of random. Why? I don't know. Sure, you might say that I now sound like him, but not then. There was a part of me that was like, hey, there's something to this. I want to watch. I want to study. This is the beauty of intention. So I started watching all of his movies. I think we started with Ghost of Girlfriend's Past. Yeah, I love that film. And I remember it was like, she's taking a shower, I'm there, I'm like goo goo gaga mindset. I pull out the remote and I'm like scrolling on Netflix like this. I'm not joking, I had no life. The person you're seeing here is some sort of afterthought that I had on the couch that I didn't think was real, so bear with me. Pull out the remote. I'm going on Netflix, I look. And I'm like, oh my God, what's this movie? And I see tall, blonde, and handsome. And I'm like, Matthew McConaughey. No, I don't have any relationship to him, but let's watch it. And I watched the film. And it was something very subtle. It was, once I finished it, it was like, watch the next one. And of course, the next one I watched was How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And then it was like something was flickering inside me. I could hear the voice a little bit louder. And then it said, watch all of his films. So I watched True Detective, Dazed and Confused, which was the first film he made. And the one film that definitely shot a hole in my heart, it opened it so much. Contact. Of course, Interstellar, but that's like one of my favorite movies of all time. I won't even count that as a McConaughey film. I wasn't just watching these movies. I was listening to something on a deep intuitive level. This is the first step, especially when you're in the darkest places in your life. You have to listen to things on an intuitive level. You have to take the voice's guidance. You have to take it seriously. Because if you don't, you're truthfully alone. And this is all about confronting that one belief that you're not alone. So I'm there, I'm queuing up the film. I didn't think the way that I think. A lot of people think that this just magically appeared. It didn't happen. Something happened to me, okay? I opened myself up to the idea of me being this. And at the time I was 20, looking at this film, and of course Matthew McConaughey plays a very similar character to me in the movie, so you can go ahead and watch that. And then there's Jodie Foster's character, who's somebody who's trying to get in contact with this whole meaning and purpose. And although I watched it, I remember finishing it when I was younger, and I didn't think anything of it. I recently just rewatched it, and I just couldn't help myself but break into tears. I couldn't break into tears at the idea that I wasn't just watching Matthew McConaughey films. I was watching things that deeply spoke to me, that opened me up to a possibility of me being more. A couple months go by out of that relationship. I left the relationship, and I found myself watching more film. I watched the movie Bronson, which is pretty much about the most expensive jail inmate in all of England, who decided to do the most authentic thing possible, which is the only thing he loved, which is to beat people up. And so he decided to do that, and that's what he did for a majority of his life until, of course, near the end of the film, he turns towards art, which is actually sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars today. The next film that I watched after that was the movie Fright Night. That helped me integrate my shadow. I did a whole video on that. But what I'm really trying to get at here is that if you start listening and you start opening up to a part of you, and you start willing to take a chance that perhaps maybe that voice is the thing that has guided you in the universe before you even were a speck, and that you're not disconnected from all of reality, not just from your body separating you from that, but perhaps you are a part of it and you guys are collectively together on this, and that there's this thing outside of your ego called purpose, and it's actually what brings people together. And it's not because you control things, but perhaps because control is the biggest illusion you've ever thought you had, and that's the one thing that keeps you under its thumb. Control is controlling you. So, watching these films wasn't just watching films. I never realized what film really was. It's art. And art is a bridge to the soul, and it's a way to access that higher voice. I play the character because it brings out parts of us that are in the character. And in our life, we're accumulating these characters and allowing it to play who we are. So although I was in this really dark place, I realized I was never alone. And I want you to pay attention to that. Whether you're going through a difficult relationship, whether you just lost a few of your best friends, maybe a loved one has passed away, you're not alone. And I want you to listen to these voices and where it's pulling you, where it's guiding you. Perhaps maybe the environment that you were born in was not for you at all. Perhaps it's the one thing that keeps you hostage. It keeps you a slave. And maybe you're just here to break free from that by being able to test whether or not you are alone in the universe. And it's not a metric of getting on a plane and flying into another dimension, but it's about realizing perhaps maybe it's always something that has been here in our hearts and we can access it right here and now. So although through the midst of that, I finished the relationship, and the first thing I did was, of course, just study everything Matthew McConaughey. Why don't I? So I read his book. The first book I ever read in 21 years. I know you guys are probably like, well, you look like you read a lot of books. You're very well-spoken. What makes you well-spoken is your ability to speak. It was like one of the things that stopped me in my life. It's like, do stretches before you do squats. No, do squats. Just do it at a lighter weight, and now you're stretching the movement. So before you go ahead and try to avoid the most difficult thing possible, which is to look like a fool, just step into it and just surrender to that process. So I am out of the relationship. I disassociate as I have this personality split. And then this is when I started to feel crippling anxiety. I started to feel it choke on my neck like I was being hung every morning. I started to feel a weight on my chest that would get heavier and heavier every day that I would go by. This felt like holding onto a rope that was running through my hands as I couldn't feel my fingers, but I had to stick through it because I knew I had to. That there was something coming in. And that's the most difficult thing in life, being consistent. Now, of course, being consistent with what? The first thing that started coming to mind after the relationship was realizing I wanted to start journaling. Do you want to know what the most difficult thing in my life was? To write down an idea and let it not be Nietzsche. It doesn't matter. These are your ideas. You just judge them. And you live in a world that judges them. You live in a head that judges you. And you create that reality every day that you can't put the pen and pencil on the paper and you can't just say the truth about how you really feel. I started with one line. Went about my job, lived my life. It was simple. And I started to write more and more. Paragraphs went to pages, and pages finished journals. It took me about 1.5 years to finish my first journal. But I'll tell you one thing, the most beautiful thing that we can ever do is write down the parts of ourselves when we feel it. Get in touch with those things. So that was first and foremost, number one, journaling. In the darkness, in the places where you feel like you're the least seen, how about you give yourself some light? Hear your own thoughts, hear your own ideas, and put them down on paper. I couldn't write down my first goal until I was 22. The idea of seeing my word to myself scared the out of me. But maybe that's what you need. Maybe you need a little more surrender to the fear, and that's okay. You're not alone. Not only journaling was one of the most powerful, impactful things in my life. I realized the second most powerful, impactful thing in my life was showing up for the people in my life. This isn't a crazy concept or a crazy idea. This is genuinely you realizing that your life is the people in your life. Personally, what made me struggle so much, I was always in avoidance of my father, an avoidance of my mother. I wanted to beat my family. That was my goal. I was the youngest of 7. How about I just become the richest, baddest motherfucker, and then that'll show them. Well, we're the same people, right? It's ridiculous when you look at it that way, but that's how I felt, that's how I lived. So there was a point where I said, no. This is all there is. I'm going to show up 100% to the environment that I'm in. I wanted to leave, I wanted to move out, I wanted to get my own mansion, I wanted to around like an idiot. But I said, no. I haven't given the people around me a shot. That truly is me, and that's what you're forgetting. The people around you are truly you. And so I'd wake up every morning, and I'd give my mother a hug. Now to break this down for you, that was never something I'd ever want to do. But I told myself something. It was something that changed my life. Close all the doors, this is all there is. You want to escape? Love it so much that you choose to leave. Most people, if they gave everything that they could to the environments that they're in, they'd never want to leave. So I'd wake up every morning, I'd give my mother a hug, I'd buy my father a coffee, and I'd spend the first 2 hours just spending time with people I love. Not many people have that. And I notice for me, the emotions I have, the sensitivity that I experience all the time, the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is just jump into a client because everybody rewards that. You're working. No. You're distancing yourself from the thing that's going to make you great. How about you remember that? You're not just working. You're saying that because it's convenient. What's difficult is to understand these signals that are coming from a much higher power to unveil your purpose, and they're outside of career. It's outside of every single person's perspective. It's quite literally why you're here under eternity's banner. And we're trying to figure that out together. So I was just showing up for the first 2 hours of my day. I didn't take any clients. I just showed up for my family. The next thing that I did, on top of just being there for my family, was being there for myself. I would take the first 2 hours, drinking a coffee, talking to a friend that I love, and spending time with my parents. After that, I would spend the next 2 hours sitting outside. Most people don't ever get to see the sunshine. They don't get to experience the stillness of reality. They don't get to feel their thoughts in contrast to that. And most of us always tell ourselves that we need to be somewhere. If we truly can access this part of ourselves, I promise you'd never leave your house. It's so beautiful. It's the part of you that's most true. It's the part of you that's most grateful. It's the part of you that's most authentic. And so what I would do, from somebody who went to training 20 clients a day to training 3, I would just go outside and I would meditate. You know, most people consider meditation to be this form of escapism. Nah. How about you just realize what you've been escaping in life and tap into the things that you haven't been paying attention to? So I take my journal, I take my religious garbs, I wrap my tefillin, I'm Jewish, do the Jewish stuff. Everybody has their own metric of doing that. And I'd go outside and I'd sit down. And I would really just put myself in this place. It didn't matter. I would stay there and sit there as long as I needed to. And now you're like, oh, now you go to work. No. Still don't go to work. I make myself breakfast and I also eat that outside. These were things that I had to do to get out of some of the darkest places that I've ever been in. They were so dark, I was afraid of communicating them to other people because they might be concerned about me. And then that concern would make me further spiral that concern. And I was afraid to communicate that to others, but I knew I had to take things under my own control, which is something you can do to mediate the pain, to mediate the agony, to mediate the suffering. I had so much of it, I didn't want to share it. My dreams were nightmares, my mornings were hell, my work was burdensome, my friends were fake, my body wasn't mine. And I felt further and further and further away from this thing called life that allows us to not just experience dopamine, but allows us to feel something called fulfillment. Moving forward, I found myself just experiencing this stillness, and this time I voluntarily welcomed it, opposed to just letting it jump me and it would scare me. Another thing that really helped me, which was right after this, which actually should be right before this, I would play ambient music when I wake up in the morning. I play classical music. I heard demons first thing. I heard criticism first thing. I just needed to know that it was okay to feel those things, and you don't need to do this alone. And so when I put myself with this, the music would allow me to anchor an emotion. It's a very powerful NLP tool. But there's a certain kind of peace that we need to have access to, that we feel we don't have access to because of circumstance. Enough of you feeling an emotion associated to a kind of music or a kind of song can allow you to tap into that emotion, and you can actually give from that place because it's something infinitely accessible. So I'd go outside, I'd meditate, I'd listen to ambient music, I'd journal, and then I'd eat breakfast after. Now, the thing that has quite literally saved my ass to this day, taking care of my body. It's not a crazy idea. For me, it was bodybuilding. For other people, I'm sure it's hiking, CrossFit, surfing. But your body is the vessel by which you receive those downloads. It's the thing that allows you to understand what you're feeling and experiencing. It is the way that allows us to navigate our life. It is quite literally our vessel. And if we don't start taking care of that, just imagine the kind of compounding negative emotions. We need to be able to experience those things. And every time I'd be experiencing a cosmic amount of negative emotion, I would go to the gym late at night, you put your headphones on, you zone in, and you work out. Now, would I feel drastically better? I didn't have the awareness to feel drastically better. But I did know that if I were to continue to do those things, I would open up to what I'm really here to do. The last and final one, talking to people. I swear to God, your ego is going to hate this. But it's being able to accept that you have a desire to be around people. We all do. We all desire human contact. We desire communication. We desire conversation. And above all, we desire connection. When I stopped rejecting this idea that we're separate from one another, I started to investigate people, started to conversate with people. I would engage with conversations with everybody and anybody. My job no longer became my job. I started giving everything that I could to not just the family and to my friends and to my brothers. I started to give everything that I could to the clients that I had. I stopped trying to leave my training job. I started trying to give to it. I stopped trying to leave my family. I started trying to give to it. And the more that I did, it was like all of the barriers that kept me stuck, all of the things that kept me trapped, started to fall like a box, just collapsing outward. As you could see all of reality and the stars above you, and you could feel the forest and its cool wind and the damn sand on your feet and the sound of the ocean waves. We're not separate. What really I started to realize is that we're more than enough in our lives. We're more than enough as we are. We've just never given ourselves the time to experience ourselves. We reject it. Every action that we have at work is a form of rejection. Every single conversation that we have to avoid parts of ourselves is another form of rejection. Every day that we wake up and obsess ourselves with meaningless tasks is another form of rejection. And all of those things keep you further and further and further and further away from the parts of you that are truly real, that are truly from God, the reason why you're here. And isn't that what we're here to discover? So although through the midst of this, I started to create something called peace. Peace in that I am discovering my purpose. The first step to finding your purpose is discovering it. And I promise you, there is no more romantic period of your life than the first step. The first step is the most beautiful. The first step is the most eternal. The first step, there's the most humility. The first step, there's the most vitality, strength. And when I took that in my life, I stopped trying to dive into all of what reality has told me to dive into. I started challenging my beliefs about the world around me by being able to give myself space, time, understanding, affection, patience, and removing all the expectations and starting to give to everything around me. So from the top, you got art. Find it, contact it, it'll call back onto you, I promise. Quite literally, no pun intended. That's what the movie Contact's about. You call it, it calls you back. The next is journaling. Your dialogue needs to be out on paper. Your thoughts, your demons, and all of those antagonizing thoughts, those doubts, those concerns, those fears. See them. They're not that scary. Your head likes to jumble those things. The things that you want to achieve in your life. All the places that you want to be. Write them down. The thoughts that you have. The things you hold on your heart. What do you feel? What do you experience? Get it out. Watch what happens when you can see yourself. It turns out you're not that complicated. Exercise. Whether it's bodybuilding, surfing, take care of your body and do it daily. It's not something that you put an expectation on or a condition on. This is something you do effortlessly. It's something that you do because I hope you know it's going to ground you in reality and it will be a part of yourself for the rest of your life. You only got one body. This is the one that personally changed my life, which is just giving to the environment that you're in. Stop running from it. It's really not that difficult when you realize everything in the environment that you're in is truly who you are. Give it some love. Watch it grow. The oasis you dream about is the one that you're standing on that you haven't watered just yet. And then the last one. Give yourself the time in the morning to just listen to some music, to meditate, to look at the clouds on a cloudy day, to feel the sun on a sunny day, and to experience how you feel and how you think, and to breathe. There's no rush. Nobody gets off here alive. And with that, I want to leave you with one last thing. I never really thought I had a chance. I never thought that I'd be here, that's for sure. But hindsight, I can tell you one thing. There was this voice. It never left me. It never left any of us. And it guided me. And it pulled me out of the darkest places because I called onto it. And it called back. Listen deep. These dark places are where you find yourself. And I promise you, with those things, there's nothing you can't endure. Because I believe that all of those things are a manifestation of you realizing that your life has meaning.